Welcome to Post-Traumatic Thriving, where we explore life's toughest issues along with the art, science, and stories of resilience. Please be advised that our guests share their raw stories of addiction, abuse, crime, and tragedy, along with tips to survive and thrive. And now, here is our host, Dr.RandallBell.
So welcome back to Post-Traumatic Thriving. I'm Dr.RandallBell. I am here with TanyaBrown is in the house.
Hey.
And our incredible guest, Wes Geer. Get it into gear.
Yep.
And the first question I want to ask you, Wes, is, what was the question?
It's called Craft Clay by Sebastian. You want to know my hair product, right?
Yeah.
Craft Clay.
I need some volume in my hair.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, Wes, in these early days where you're just partying, playing, working for data entry, do you kind of looking back think maybe you were self-medicating, or was that really not part of the whole deal?
I was self-medicating from the time I started smoking weed because I had to have weed all day, every day. It was like, and the AA purists have given me shit for saying this in the AA rooms because they like to keep it about alcohol. But I say I was smoking weed alcoholically, meaning like I couldn't face life without it. That was the problem I was having. Mm-hmm. So for me, looking at the progression of my addiction, it started really early.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't not have weed. And I started stealing money from my dad to have weed. Like if I was going to go out, he had a wallet. He always had a stack of 20s. I'd be like, he's not going to notice one of these. And I'd buy my six pack of Budweiser and get a couple, fingers of weed in a bag and drink all the beer and smoke all the weed. That's what we did.
Mm-hmm. Would you consider yourself as a happy kid? I mean, looking back, or do you think you were off and this was all kind of self-induced medicated happiness? How do you kind of see things?
I think that alcoholics, and now I'm talking the concept of like alcoholics as defined by AA, where we have the allergy and all that. And there's this restless, irritable discontentedness, where I don't feel so great sober and so I'm self-medicating. I do feel like I was a happy kid. I wouldn't say like I was clinically depressed, but I think that there's this low level anxiety with addicts. That's like, this would be fun to hypothesize with, a physician, clinician or anything. But what I notice is just, especially when you see newcomers come into the rooms of AA, they're like ADD and just like, it's just like, they're like anxious, like a animal that just got out of a owner that beat him, just this distrust and this fear. And I think that that's something, and I think that's one of the biggest kind of unspoken elements of why the potential alcoholic or drug addict has the feeling they have that's different from other people when we use. Like if you're like, yeah, life's cool, smoke weed. That's when you hear the stories, I think more so of like, I didn't like how it made me feel. I'm already good. So, but when you're kind of like, who likes me? Do you like me? Fear. Oh, that underlying, you're like, oh, fuck. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's what I had, and I don't know where that comes from. If it's trauma, sexual trauma, I probably had some concussions playing football and who knows? I think we know so little about the origins.
Were you playing football too through all?
I did. I played football at Pop Warner when I was young, and I was like so undersized. And in my defense, by the way, off on a tangent, these people who are like participation trophies, everything these days turns into a thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you can soundbite it, it's now real and it's a thing. Yeah. I don't think that participation trophies are destroying the world and men on the whole. I think maybe we could look at it. But for me, when I was about half the size of the guys I was playing football with, and just to go to practice and put on my pads and hit those motherfuckers, and yes, I will say motherfuckers, I deserve a trophy for that. Because it was scary.
Yeah.
Dude, you got out. You came here every day. Those coaches work your ass off. I'm sure.
And they're serious about it.
They're serious about it. And so I want a trophy at the end of the year. Go, dude, you came out, you suited up, you worked your little butt off, you got creamed many times. Here's a trophy for playing this year. That's my tangent. But yeah, I couldn't continue playing in high school because I was just too small.
Okay. So you're on the timeline. You're now have you graduated at this point or from high school?
When I was,
Did you graduate?
Yeah, I barely, I limped out of high school. What happened is, to go back to that story, there's so many little subplot channels I could go down.
Sure.
And so, but what happened is I was living with my dad, and then I was getting kicked out of more schools. And then finally I went to a continuation school. One of the reasons my mom was okay for me leaving her and that El Toro High School was to stay in a normal high school, because they kicked me out of the school district, meaning I had to go to Silverado, which is where all the losers who smoke cigarettes and weed go. And she's like, I don't see that as being a good outcome. Mm-hmm. It's a continuation school. So I went to Dad to Esperanza, which was way more strict. Like, they were gnarly over there. They're horrible, just ridiculous. Anyhow, I won't get into examples. But I got kicked out of there and then ended up at a continuation school where I continued to ditch. And finally, my dad called every one of my teachers and said, you got to tell me if my son is in class, call me immediately. So he basically cornered me. Mm-hmm. And once I knew I was cornered, then I thrived and ended up graduating early. But in continuation school, it's like, read this book and we give you X number of credits every day. It's like so easy. Yeah. So all of a sudden on an October, I don't even remember the date, but I was like, probably because I was stoned. But some October day, they came in or they said, Wes, come to the office. I'm like, okay, what's up? They're like, you graduated. I was like, what? That's like that. And I remember crying a little bit. Like, that's it? No send off, no nothing. They're like, oh, we'll have a ceremony. It's like in 9 months if you want to come back. I'm like, fuck, I'm going to come back in August. Like, that's not going to happen. And I remember it was kind of a sad thing. Like, there was no ceremony. I don't know why I was sad. I have to talk to my therapist about that and move some energy. But I graduated. And now I love to tell people, because I'm proud of myself and what I've accomplished, that I barely graduated high school. And to go off on another tangent, for anybody who's a parent out there, I get it. I should have terrified anybody trying to be my parent, because I was running amok, doing blow, getting kicked out of school. Having said that, the school system's so antiquated, and I don't know what we do now. Mm-hmm. But to think it's abnormal, like this ADD, give everybody meds bullshit, I don't back it. To say that, like, my son or daughter's abnormal because they don't find it easy to sit in a chair all day while you go blah, 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 blah. Come on. Yeah. Like, how did God intend us to be? You're telling me that a 14-year-old kid, in the way we are wired, was intended to sit in a classroom hour after hour and not talk and interact with his peers? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, oh, you have ADD, give you some drugs. Let me give you some amphetamines at 14 years old. Yeah. Fuck that. So I just think that I got very angry and charged about this. And I just think that, like, we have to realize that, like, not everybody's wired. I was very intelligent. I had no problem learning anything they wanted me to learn. And thereby was like, I don't care. I don't want to spend 5 hours learning Pythagorean theorem for why. Not into it. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that I can't be a successful human.
Right. Do you think maybe part of the issue going on here is that, I mean, obviously you're a bright guy. Do you think that you were just kind of bored with school? And so the drugs and the rock kind of gave you a creative way to get out of the boredom?
Yeah, boredom. Yeah. So there's the other thing too with people with ADD, and I don't know much about it, but you find that when they love something, they can focus very easily. So for me, I could, be stoned, right? That technically it's supposed to be hard to learn when you're stoned, but I was stoned and I was mastering the guitars with ADD or whatever I have. So I think the magic solution is to find what people love. Mm-hmm. And I think the scarier part is when somebody can't find something that they can get excited about. Yeah. That is a bummer. But, and then look at all these people now, if we're going to get off on this tangent, that get degrees, and the degree doesn't even mean shit anymore. It used to be like, if you even had like a BA, you're cool, and then you have to have a master's. And now it's like, man, if you're not a master's or a PhD, it doesn't mean much in terms of guaranteeing you some sort of earning capacity. But then on top of that, and I envy anybody who goes to school. I think it's awesome. I'm not, throwing shade on the whole concept. But then there's also all these people that are good at learning, quote, learning in the scholastic system, but they're not free thinkers. They don't know how to think and they don't know how to apply themselves. And then, now we have social media and this realm we live in where with all this digital stuff, and it really creates the ability for anybody to be entrepreneurial.
Yeah. And just last night I was on TikTok, I love TikTok, but anyway, I came across a site. I forgot the name or I'd plug it, but it was basically from Harvard, Stanford, 1,000 universities are offering free education. So education because of the internet is just kind of like here, there, and everywhere. So,
yeah. And then now you got
I went to school at the wrong time.
What do you mean?
I'll send them my bill.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's free now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
But the thing is that you're fortunate, Wes, because one thing I've learned through the book I wrote, about Leo Fender and meeting Mrs. Fender and going backstage everywhere, kind of as her chauffeur. Musicians, the people that have that gift, it's very mathematical, and they're not dumb. They may come out, spandex, leather, whatever, genre you're talking about, but then you start talking to them, because there's a lot of downtime before the show starts and all that, that, and you're talking to some really wickedly,
Right.
smart people. But for the folks who don't have that gift, going through high school and not having some skill, that continues to be a challenge.
Or a passion, and then there's the other saying too, which is like, there's a bunch of people, there's probably a more concise way to say it, but there's a bunch of people out there who do what you're doing that are way more successful because they hustle harder. It's not about the talent. It's about the hustle, and you see that especially with music these days. Well, it's all weird with the world of TikTok and social media, but the way they're getting success is they found out how to hustle followers in whatever way. You know what I mean? And other people are like, well, I'm posting and nothing's happening. Well, it is for other people. So what aren't you doing?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was having down in Laguna is the Leach. I forgot his first name, but he's the coach at USC in tennis. And I asked him once, what is it that makes the Wimbledon winners? His son won Wimbledon. We're talking major league stuff. And he said it's two components. One is the gift, that's what I call it, the ability, and also the hustle. And so to keep kind of projecting forward in a positive, direction, you really need both.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have the gift, but they don't have the drive.
The drive.
It's clear
Exactly.
you're kind of experiencing both.
Yeah, I've always been a leader. I don't know what that means, but it sounds good. No.
Sounds
But
good to
even
me.
in my bands, it's not that I try to take over or whatever, but I can't, when I'm passionate about something, I can't stop thinking about it. And then my brain is just wired to say, if I want to get here, how do I get there? I will think of a way.
Yeah.
And I'll keep trying to think of a way. And then the beauty you always have is the world around you shows you all these people that got there. It's not like you're on an island all by yourself, trying to figure out how to get coconuts. So, do you know what I mean? It's like we have the whole world, especially now with, YouTube and social media. We have all these examples of how to do stuff out there, but that's kind of how I'm wired. And that is the element of drive that has helped my success. And when we get into like the corn story and some other stuff, I'll get into like how I only got that gig because of going to that next level.
Yeah.
Well, that and the creative element, because a lot of people can play covers. I listen to a song now, and I'm good enough, that I listen to it. I can play I can track down the thing. But as far as the creative side, that's another element altogether. Is composing the song. Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah, my mom's kind of like you. It's like she could kind of hear a note. My mom was able to play Bocelli on her piano. Wow. With no notes, no nothing. Like she could hear something and then play it. Yeah. Truly. Not perfect.
Sure.
Because she had tremors on top of it, but she did have that. But to go back, like with the hustle, I remember having a conversation with Denise's son, Sean, years ago. And Sean, entrepreneurial, like ever since he was like 18 years old, everything he touched kind of turned to gold. And he said one time in a conversation that he was sharing, somebody said, Sean, you're so lucky. He goes, I'm not lucky. I work hard. I hustle.
Right.
And then on Instagram, I was listening to an interview with J-Lo, and she said the same thing. She goes, I don't do anything different than other people except one thing. I work hard. So it's like, how strong is that will? How strong is that drive? How bad do you want that?
Well, I will now drop on you something that will be out of our timeline, but I analyzed successful people who had careers that I envied. Like, there's people who were editing music videos when you used to have thousands and thousands of dollars of gear to do it and all this stuff, or my brother, or this, what ended up being my fiance. She was a fashion stylist and designer. And so what I found is this: you have to have some raw talent. Mm-hmm. There will be opportunity that comes your way, like that lucky break. Yeah. And that's where the hustle kicks in, because each of these people that I analyzed, when the break came, and then I applied it later, I'll tell you my story. When that break came, I don't know, there's a better way probably to verbalize it, but I say they blew it up. Meaning like for example, this woman who ended up being my fiance, but she got the gig. She got the lucky gig to be Britney Spears' wardrobe assistant, which means sew it and clean it, whatever. But she took that opportunity to get contacts and start designing wardrobe and going, here, Britney, what about my designs? And went next level. Yeah. So you have to hustle, have some talent. I think the talent is less important than when the opportunity comes. How do you blow that up into the next
Leverage
level?
It. Yeah.
A lot of people don't know how to do that. They lay back and they play small. Well, I don't know.
Well, I think the big point is the hustle, the work ethic, because I'll tell you don't get on the road with a rock band. I mean, behind the scenes, I first time I went backstage with Mrs. Fender and I saw all the, big trucks, and tour buses. I mean, it's like an industrial scale production there. Yeah. And you don't do that without, in spite of the show, there's real hustle and a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So at this point in your career, you're, you're kind of out of high school. You're still doing a lot of drugs and stuff. And you're just,
full blown tweaker, about to sign a record deal.
And you've quit the job as a data processor.
Fired, yeah.
And so are you making enough? Okay, fair enough.
Because he was tweaking.
Are you making money at this point off playing?
Well, the funny thing is, in the unmanageability part of the disease, is I could have got unemployment, and I think I got 1 or 2 checks and was so loaded I stopped filing, and so I had all this money that was supposed to come my way. Meanwhile, I'm living with 2 of my bandmates, and we're all doing massive amounts of meth and partying and not taking out the trash. And we had this giant, probably 50 bags of trash on the side of the house. We got evicted. The bills are going sideways. Now we know we're going to get signed and on our record deal. And I was to the point where I had a buddy who was working at the Sugar Shack, who, by the way, his name is Scott Holiday, and he's in a band called Rival Sons, which is crushing it now. Great rock and roll band. But he was working as a waiter at the Sugar Shack, and I literally was waiting on the checks forever to come in from the record label, and I had to beg him for food. Dude, I have no money. Can you give me some eggs? And so that's where it was at that time. So, I've had in my story many times being homeless, evicted, asking for food, and all sorts of stuff, living in my car. Matter of fact, at that point, now I started dating this girl, Susie, who I was very in love with, and we were kind of just courting slowly. If she didn't let me come spend the night, which sometimes she wouldn't, she'd be like, I'm hanging with my friends. You can't. I would have to sleep in my car. Mm-hmm. And I had an 88 Cadillac Eldorado that I bought for $2,000 used, and that's what I was doing. But when you're on tweak, you don't have to sleep much. You basically go to sleep at 4 in the. I would go to sleep at 4 or 6 in the morning and then get up at 10.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So at this point, you're kind of couch
surfing.
I don't know. I mean, you're got a record deal coming, so you're doing something right.
You can't tell me I have a problem, which is important to tie this into other aspects, such as how many people out there, maybe they're an actor or they have success or they have a bank account or they have nice cars or home, whatever. And how do you tell them they have a problem? Because usually that's how you decide. So I actually had my drummer come to me and goes, Wes, can I talk to you? When does this all end? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm leading us to a record deal. You know what I mean? What problem do I have?
Mm-hmm.
But it was disgusting, my problem, you know, because my manager came. Now, one gig we were playing up in Big Bear, I think, with Incubus at the time when we're all just on the edge of being signed. My manager walked in and he was from Philadelphia, kind of obnoxious guy. And again, this is far before political correctness. And he goes, Jesus Christ, Wes, next stop Auschwitz or what? Because I was so sucked up. I was 123 pounds. And that, I remember that. I was like,
Wow.
what are you talking about? I'm 6'1". I was 123 pounds as I didn't eat. So you can have massive success and also be on the verge of death.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's not really a sustainable lifestyle, you know, as a rock star or any musician or frankly, any career, because you got to be dependable. I mean, the enormous amounts of money going to the arenas and the front fees for concerts and studio
you also have
time.
to have the stamina also,
everything.
you know, otherwise you can't perform.
Yeah.
A lot of us, when we would, now I'm talking about being on stage, you sign your record deal, you're going out on tour, you have your tour bus. We toured forever in an RV, by the way, and that was ugly. But what we would do is when we get on the road, that's when a lot of us would detox a little bit. Like for us tweakers, you're like, oh, good. I'm going to get in the bus in Costa Mesa and we're going to drive 2 days to our first gig. Oh, I can just sleep. And we did a lot of
Catch
that.
up.
And then, you know that like, okay, we're going to play shows, but you're bored all day. So I'll just sleep all day, wake up, play the show, get drunk, go back to bed. And that was like a detoxification. There's a lot of musicians that did that on the road. I mean, I could tell, there's so many I could tell you that would tell you that same story.
Yeah. Okay, so where do you want to go from here? I mean, you had the record deal in hand.
The record deal.
The check showed up, I guess, at some point.
Yeah, we started getting checks. We toured for a couple of years in an RV. We did Ozfest, like second stage, playing with bands like Slipknot when they were brand new. And, we played clubs in the early days. This is Head, which turned into Head PE because the label may have changed the name. So won't bore you with that horrible decision. So Head PEs, we played with Incubus and System of a Down and like Deftones and all these bands that became legendary. And we're on tour. What was happening is we couldn't get tours because everybody was afraid to go out with us. We were intimidating with our musical prowess, but also known to be nightmares because we were crazy. Now the singer was a little older than I, so we were of the generation where it's like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. What are you guys tripping about? But now we're starting to see bands who are kind of a little more, mellow, and some of them didn't party. And we were out with Linkin Park, and after the show, they'd go in the back of the bus and work on music. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Let's get drunk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's girls out there.
Yeah, for sure.
But look at where they are now. And so, we were struggling to break through. So what happened in terms of self-medication is like, I got out on the road, I got off the meth eventually. And now I'm just drinking like a fish and doing everything but the meth because I've like established that is not sustainable. Exactly as you said. The singer and I, we got in a fight over a girl. That's a way over simplification of it, but it destroyed. He and I were the main two guys that would work on music together, then bring it to the band and take it to the next level. For the most part. So once he and our relationship was destroyed, we got the rock and roll band saver counselors. Nothing could happen. I took lie detector tests. Nothing could fix it. It was irreparable. The last year of touring, and now Head PE, we're opening for Godsmack on what they call shed tours, like amphitheaters. So look, we're ready. If we one more good record, and we're like at a friggin' awesome level. And but we got in a giant fight that I won't articulate here. And I was like, dude, that you crossed some lines, and this hasn't gotten better. And I hung in there, and I'm out of here. See what you could do without me, like any musician that quits a band, and you're like, oh. You can go on without me. Well, that didn't work out. Yeah. And then so what happened is as soon as I came off the road, and now I've been, over probably 10 years in this band. It's been my life, my dreams. Like for anybody who listens, like starting a business. Imagine starting a business from the ground up, getting some success and, taking it around the world. And then now it's gone. I was like, who am I? And I called my brother instantly because he's a sales rep for music equipment and he does very well. He has some of the top lines of gear. And we were always tight, and he's a guitar player and all these kinds of things. Well, I said, I need a job. And I jumped right into a day job. And I had to pick up the phone and go, Audio Gear, this is Wes. How can I help you? And it was like you were gutting me. And, like I couldn't even handle that. And like you're saying, self-medicating. Well, at that time, I kind of was, when I was ending the touring days, I would just basically play the show, get drunk real fast on a few drinks and go to my bunk. Not causing anybody any problems. Like a couple stiff drinks, I'm like, okay, time for bed. Everybody else is having fun. I'm in a depression. My point is, I had some semblance of control. When I left the band, I went back to the meth with some lesser companion who's like, dude, the problem you're having is you were doing meth with this. And he showed me heroin. I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Thanks for sharing that with me. You're such a good friend. So now, because I couldn't do meth without taking the edge off it, I used to do meth and drink, and that was my balance. And so I started doing meth and heroin and doing a desk job with high-tech stuff on computers. And this is like, email isn't even that new. Put it this way, Gmail hadn't even come out at the time yet. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're still on Yahoo
like
and shit.
AOL.
Yeah.
All right.
And so I have like pretty much feels like wet brain. I can't concentrate. I'm learning all this technical stuff, and I'm on meth and heroin. And now because I have to show up at the office, I couldn't sleep ever, really. You know what I mean? Because by the time I'd fall asleep, it's like, I got to go to work. And it was hell. And so I told my brother finally after a year or so of that behavior, like, look, I got to tell you, I got a drug problem. Now he's a normal guy.
Well, how old are you when you say that to your brother?
Goodness gracious. So I'm probably mid 30s now. Cause I got the record deal mid 20s. I toured for 10 years. Now I'm mid 30s ish.
Okay. So 10 years on, flying high, and then 10 years later, it's kind of a crash, mid 30s.
Admission.
Yeah.
Okay.
I admit.
That's a big step in your journey. Just admitting you got something going on.
Yeah. Is my phone being that guy?
Know.
No, it's not. It's not my phone.
Okay.
Maybe mine.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it mine?
Some buzz. I just want to make sure I'm not the jerk.
I think we're good.
That's okay. I'm the jerk.
I'm totally kidding. It happens.
So mid 30s, you are
I'm lost. That's what I am.
Yeah. You're kind of not, because for the first time you're facing some reality.
So my brother gives me this great job with no skills. I'm in the office. He pays me way more money than I'm worth. We're 2 blocks from the beach. I can wear whatever I want. He's like, hey, come help me run this company. He knew that I was a smart guy, but I'm just a complete shit show. And so, I was like, dude, this is what I'm doing. He goes, okay, hey, let's get you out of that apartment. Come live with me. Throw the phone away, which was horrible. I had so many rock stars numbers. I was like, yeah, throw the phone away. Threw it in a dumpster. My flip phone.
Oh.
And it was basically, he was like, just smoke some weed, have a couple drinks, but stay away from the hard stuff. I'm like, totally. And so we kind of made a deal. Like, he's like, I was like, I've quit before. I've quit weed before and cigarettes before. And I can control this thing.
Yeah.
And so he goes, cool, do it. And then, but if you don't, I'm going to tell the family. And I was like, oh, no problem. Well, I kept like relapsing into drugs. I couldn't figure it out. So he was drug testing me, and I was getting fake pee. And I remember one time when he would call the drug test place and they'd be like, Mr. Geer. And they thought he was my dad, because he's like, I'm calling to check on Wes Geer. His name's Alan Geer. Mr. Geer, great news. Your son's pee is clean. And he's like, clean? What do you mean? Clean. Great news, right? No. And he'd hit me up. He said, what's going on? We smoked weed. There's no weed in your pee. What's going on? I was like, oh, okay, you caught me, And I just remember this last episode, and he's basically like, you screw up again, I'm going to tell the family. And
yeah, why was that? I think I can guess, but you tell us, why was that a concern?
What's that?
Telling the family.
Well, he's basically knew I had a drug problem, and if I didn't right the ship, he's going to bring other people in and take it, escalate, basically.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
So at this time, I'm like going days without drinking or using and, hitting the gym at 5 a.m. And I would have these runs of doing pretty good. I remember telling my friends, I just have a couple margaritas. I'm good. Well, one day on a Tuesday or something, I remember going, I'm going to go have a beer. I haven't had a beer. Had a beer. I was like, Well, I just remember feeling unfulfilled. I mean, I'll have a shot of Jaeger. And next thing you know, I was at the cocaine dealer's house. And I went on a 3-day run. Well, and I made up some story. I'm helping my friend who has cancer and I can't come in. And he's like, dude, you're done. So he intervened on me. And at that point, I remember thinking, okay, he's like, basically he said, if you go to rehab, maybe you'll get your job back. I'll support you. If you don't, you're on your own. Go do. And I had like $1,000 in my bank account. And I remember thinking, maybe I'll go to Thailand and ride elephants. I swear to God, that's what I thought. And then it hit me. And so many people have this. Yeah. So many people have this moment of clarity. And I just started crying. It's like, you're out of control. Other people's moment of clarities, their statement is a little maybe more profound, but it was like, you're out of control, dude. And it hit me on the deepest level. I can't control myself. And that was real and heavy and profound. And so I was like, okay. And I found a rehab and I just went to the one that said I could come for only 30 days. Everybody else was like 90 days. I was like, fuck that. They said, just keep an open mind. It was Ed Spatola. I went to Newfound Life in Long Beach. And we got into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I thought my problem was meth and heroin. And it talked about the allergy that produced the phenomenon of craving. And I was like, that's why when I had a beer, which I don't really even care that much about beer, it set off the craving that made me want Jägermeister, that made me go have cocaine. And I don't really even like cocaine. Yeah. It explained everything. So I got into the big book of AA and I learned about the disease of alcoholism. And I heard me in that book and I was like, this is like coming out of my soul. You know what I mean? It's like, that was my key. The 12 steps were my key to getting sober.
So awesome. Did you start doing AA, going to the meetings?
Yeah. So I'm in a rehab, Newfound Life, Long Beach, and there's 22 dudes and, some of them aren't into it. Some of them, they don't know what's going on. I was like, if I'm going to be here, let me do this deal.
Yeah.
All the way. And for me, it was kind of like, even though I still had some semblance of an ego having been a rock star, which I hate that word, but whatever. I also knew my entire life had been a struggle, just an absolute struggle. I don't know how else to put it. And I was like, I now have 30 days, I thought, to not have to worry about anything and just work on myself. How are these idiots not into this opportunity? That's what I thought, right? And I still kind of think that if you're in a rehab,
do it.
Either do it or leave.
Yeah.
What are you in here? I get it if your family's forcing you and you can't leave, but it's like, if you're not into it, fucking leave. Don't waste anybody's time. Go get loaded and, come back when you're ready. That's kind of how I feel about it. I probably sound like a jerk now, but I was into it. I was like, when am I going to get a time at 35, whatever years old, I don't have to work. I don't have to shop. I don't have to pay my bills. I'm just going to go, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And I'm starting to get feelings of that. And then about 20 days in, when it was like, I thought I might be leaving 10 days. I was like, I'm not ready to go. Did I feel like I was getting loaded? No, I just felt like I was just starting to thaw out or come to or whatever, And so I ended up staying 60 days there. And so, I went through the big book and to get to different phases, like, so you can go to an outside meeting or do this, you had to kind of hit milestones in terms of your recovery and work a certain step or meet with your sponsor. And they did cool stuff too, where they made us call people we didn't know and get rides to meetings. They made us call people every day. We had to call our sponsor every day. And why that was important is because that's how you recover. You have to learn to reach out in an awkward way and say, I need help. Because if you don't do that over and over again, I don't think you can stay sober. I'm going through that with a guy I'm helping right now. He goes to like Zoom meetings, but he doesn't know how to call other alcoholics and get connected to the group. Yeah. And when you get rid of everybody in your life, I'm not going to hang out with the tweakers and everybody getting drunk on Friday and Saturday night. Who do I got left? If I don't know how to awkwardly walk through those conversations and say, yo, I don't really even like you that much, but I need somebody to, of course, you think that part, say that in your outside voice. Yeah. But we need to hang out.
Yeah. The fellowship is so critical in recovery. Was
So
that your
critical.
only rehab that you went to?
Yes.
Good for you.
I relapsed. I met her, the aforementioned celebrity stylist, and I stopped. I thought I was weaning on my program, and I didn't realize that was a problem. And then I met her and moved out of Huntington Beach. Keep in mind, I'm a guitar player no, I'm not even a guitar player. I'm like a data entry guy now again. And
you went back to that.
Well, my brother's office is so much
Oh, I
data
got
entry.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so
Got
freaking
it.
depressing. And she's a celebrity stylist up in LA. And then we had a whole old fling from when we were much younger. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to get engaged with this girl and move into LA. And we're riding in the Rolls Royce to Elton John's private party. I'm like, yeah. But I was using her to define me.
Yeah.
And I stopped working my
powerful
program.
right there. That's powerful, what you just said.
Yeah. And I still had probably some like sexual trauma stuff, some, what's the word? Like connection issues I had, authenticity, vulnerability issues. I still had vulnerability issues. I didn't know how to be entirely me. I didn't know who I was. I wasn't working a program, and it was all about her all the time. Not by any fault of her own, but because there's just nothing of me to be about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my jerk brother, when I was going to move in with her, he always will drop these one-liners that ended up being so profound and prophetic. He was like, when I was going to move in with her, he goes, well, what about Wes? I'm like, what do you mean? I've got an apartment in Huntington Beach. She's going to live with me? No, I'm going to a big giant house in LA. What are you talking about? But he was right. I lost all of me. So anyhow, the point was you're talking about one rehab. So I ended up relapsing. That relationship fell apart for so many reasons. And I didn't go back to rehab like a lot of people did because I knew what I had to do. I called my sponsor. I went back to meth and heroin, and I called my sponsor and said, look, I'm not going to be able to get out of this house. You need to pick me up on Sunday, take me to a meeting. And I went to a meeting every day after that because that's what I knew worked.
Yeah.
I didn't need to go back to the treatment center. Some people do. And a lot of people don't need AA or whatever. To me, AA worked. I just needed to work it better.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have to go learn I didn't need a timeout. I wasn't in danger of myself. I just needed to be in a meeting every day.
What's
Well, good for
incredible
you.
here, Wes, is you got the self-awareness to
Mm-hmm.
realize, to get back on the saddle. Because I've known people that have been sober out of AA for 20 years, and then they fall off the wagon and, never get back on the saddle. And others
Oh,
do,
that's a shame.
but that's a characteristic
Yeah,
strength.
and then working in the industry, right? I mean, sometimes when I was working at admissions, my God, really 15 times, I've been here for less than a year. I've seen you 10 times, 15 times.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart, but it's also they're being forced or they're not ready. You were ready. You had your, whatever we call a rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
But you came to that. I'm going to throw up my hands up in the air and surrender and, accept what's going on, and admit.
Yeah.
That's why it worked for you.
That's the great mystery, because step one is powerlessness. So it's not really mysterious why when somebody after 20 years picks up again, they become powerless. And when you're powerless, you don't get to choose when you stop. It's just like, it's just luck. I mean, there's probably some spiritual or many other equivalencies to explain it. But, why I stopped, I don't know. I just knew I had a great life when I was sober, and I was really challenging myself to control and enjoy my drinking. Was what it says in the AA Big Book: control and enjoy. For an alcoholic, if you're under control, which is a fallacy, you're not enjoying it. Mm-hmm. When I'm enjoying my drinking, I'm out of control. The rails are off. You know what I mean? And so I had friends that were like, come on, let's go to a meeting. I'd be like, oh, tomorrow. And what happened for me is I was heavy drinking. And then right after 6 months, I ran into a buddy who had all the drugs I liked. And they weren't working anymore. Mm-hmm. The euphoria, the days of doing meth and writing music all day with the excitement of a band and playing a sold out rock show weren't there anymore. I'm now mid-30s and I'm with a bunch of losers in a bedroom going, this is not going anywhere good. And I had to call for help. And I think that's really the key.
Yeah.
Thank God, and everybody reaches that point in a different time,
And some never do.
Some never do.
And that's the great mystery. And we don't know. We don't know why some get it and why some don't,
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're still in the mid-30s kind of time frame. Am I right?
Well, I guess we talked about my relapse, which I almost had 3 years sober. So we're pushing into probably 40. And now I'm on my second bout of recovery. This is when it gets fun. Hey, if you're not depressed at home listening to this, or if you are, this is when just hang in. The sun's going to break through the clouds.
What I'm getting here
That's what I always say.
is you start using at 14, you're now pushing 40. So what is that? 25 years, if my math's right. And then we're gonna see the clouds break. Okay, so when we come back, I am gonna ask Wes. Talk about the parting of the clouds.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's just saying, hey, Wes, with such a shitty life, how did you not kill yourself?
All right, as soon as we come back, first question.
Awesome. Good.
Thanks for supporting our podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on your favorite social media. For books, merchandise, or to donate, visit CoreIQ.com. Post-Traumatic Thriving is produced by CoreIQ, a nonprofit with a mission to teach the skills we all need but are not taught in school. CoreIQ and the Post-Traumatic Thriving podcast are for informational purposes only and do not provide medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your licensed medical and mental health care providers.